We can all agree that Hitler and the Nazis were horrible and despicable. They are responsible for some of the world's most egregious atrocities, so it's no wonder that Democrats and Republicans, in their continued assault on each other, try to align Nazi philosophy of the past with current political ideology. But were the Nazis left-wing socialists, or were they far-right fascists? Nazis, or the National Socialist German Workers' Party. Wait, there it is right there in the name. Nazis were obviously socialists. Well, maybe, but not because of the name. We know that the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, more widely known as North Korea, isn't very democratic or republic. Even the People's Republic of China is actually a unitary Marxist one-party socialist system. And even close to home in America, the National Socialist Movement, the organizers of the Unite the Right in Charlottesville in 2017, well, they're not exactly socialists either. So the name can't be used as a point of fact in the Nazi ideology. Socialism has been proven ineffective, and it's contradictory to individual freedoms, which has been the cornerstone of this country. History is the great educator. It allows us to look at humanity in retrospect, learn from our mistakes, and make better informed decisions moving forward. And history has shown that socialist ideology, despite the utopian desire, has been detrimental to liberty as a whole. Yes, there are differences between socialism and communism, but communist nations like the failed states of the USSR and Cuba require that socialist foundation. And other countries like China and North Korea continue to prove that that system paves way for the oppression of basic human rights. With this understanding from what we've learned from applied socialism, which is adverse to individual freedom, it's no wonder the GOP continues to compare socialism to the Democratic Party, who do want to expand government programs and give more control to the federal government. Couple that with the evil actions of Hitler and the Nazi Party, socialism becomes a trigger word and a rally cry for the right, and the sole argument to vilify the Democratic Party. So what gives? Nazis were socialists, right? Well, talking pundits like Steven Crowder and Ben Shapiro, who are exceptional public speakers, make the argument that yes, they were socialists. Even conservative provocateur Dinesh D'Souza made a pseudo-documentary, more like a mockumentary, attempting to paint the Nazis as a full embrace of socialism. But they are biased for the conservative effort. So, let's take a look at these claims. Let's start with the workers and employment, since it's in their name. Hitler did promise jobs for everyone, along with innovative public work schemes. But doesn't every politician in every country do that? Germany, or the Weimar Republic as it was known then, was in economic ruins after the First World War due to reparations. The working and middle class suffered the most. Lack of work, hyperinflation due to unchecked printing of money, and the Great Depression weakened the stance of the government even more. It was during this time that the Weimar Republic, like much of Europe, began taking state control of many private enterprises. This reappropriation to public ownership included a wide range of sectors. By the early 1930s, communism was growing, and there was a genuine fear that communism would become the prominent political party of the Weimar Republic. It was this distrust and fear of communism that gave rise to the anti-communist fringe Nazi Party and its leader Adolf Hitler. Let me say that again. The Nazi Party gained popularity because of fear of communism, not to embrace it. And when Hitler was named chancellor in 1933, he invoked Article 48 of the Weimar Constitution and oppressed many civil rights, especially those of the Communist Party. And soon after, he manipulated the enactment of the Enabling Act, which allowed him to pass laws unchecked. This essentially solidified his dictatorship. After the Nazis gained control, they actually started to privatize numerous government-controlled areas like steel, mining, banking, local public utilities, shipyards, railways, just to name a few. This was not a socialist agenda, and it was the exact opposite of what most of Europe was doing at the time. And after publicly speaking about supporting workers' unions, he and the Nazi Party almost immediately disbanded them after gaining control. The Autobahn, normally attributed as proof of socialist public works created by the Nazis, was actually started years prior to them gaining control. Hitler recognized its potential and popularity with the people, and being the super douche he was, claimed its success as his, and took a bunch of pictures with a shovel, because, well, he's a tool. There were some enterprises still state-run, like healthcare and education, which both are notions of socialism. But, like much of Europe at the time, both were already in place, so it wasn't a Nazi invention. In fact, Germany has the world's oldest socialized healthcare, dating back to legislation enacted by Otto von Bismarck in 1883. So to claim that it was a Nazi implementation is just not true. What about the gun restrictions they put in place? Those are eerily similar to today's Democratic Party's push for gun control. Well, that's not exactly true either. German citizens were able to purchase, own, and sell guns. In fact, gun laws were actually loosened compared to the previous Weimar Republic's total ban. Mostly. Guns were restricted or denied to Jews and Nazi political opponents. Do you want to guess who those opponents were? If you guessed communists, you'd be right. They also forbid the citizens of occupied territory during the war from owning guns, for obvious reasons. So by 1938, German citizens had liberal ownership of guns. Fear of communism and anti-Semitism triggered many of the malevolent early actions of the Nazi Party. The Gestapo, or secret state police, was created. They acted under nearly maximum immunity. The main targets of the Gestapo were Jews, communists, union organizers, intellectuals, political opposition, and homosexuals. These groups would simply disappear and would be sent to their deaths at concentration camps. The book burnings that took place also targeted left-leaning writings and anything deemed un-German. Of those were Jewish, Marxist, pacifist, communist, and politically undesirable writers by the Nazi regime. The passionate urging by propaganda minister Joseph Goebbels was for German university students to embrace nationalism and to reject all things not associated with Germany and accept the leadership of the Nazi Party. But Goebbels was a proponent of socialism. He even wrote about it and promoted it, and that is very true. Many of Goebbels' early works were pro-socialist, but like many political parties, there is a range from centrist to fringe. And Goebbels and Hitler represented the vast spectrum of the Nazi Party, and disagreed on many things. However, it was very likely that Hitler tapped into Goebbels' services due to his appeal to the center-left. And this quote, attributed to Hitler, has been making its rounds around the internet. The problem is, Hitler didn't even say this. It was from Gregor Strasser, printed in a 1926 pamphlet titled Thoughts About the Tasks of the Future. It is much of Goebbels' success of distributing propaganda that has distorted the message of the Nazi Party, even today. It was his ability to deflect criticism with the Lügenpresse, or lying press, and his strategy of repetition to promote disinformation by saying, if you tell a lie big enough and keep repeating it, people will eventually come to believe it. This allowed for complacency and even support for the vile brutalities of Hitler and the Nazi Party. Another misrepresentation that Nazis were socialist was the switch from its original intent to the near complete government control of many sectors during the war, especially in occupied territory. But this wasn't due to a change in ideology, but out of necessity during the war. Very similar to how martial law would be implemented. This should be a realization to us all. Complete control and oppression of individual liberties isn't isolated to one end of a political spectrum, but it's more of a ring with the ends meeting at an authoritarian center, be the left-wing socialist government or the right-wing fascist dictatorship. Hitler and the Nazis were not a socialist organization. It was the fear of communism, the embracing of nationalism, and anti-Semitism that led to the atrocities of Nazi Germany. And if you doubt this information, fine. But I dare you to go up to any neo-Nazi or member of the National Socialist movement and tell them to their face they are left-wing socialists. They amplify ethnic superiority, but have continued the ideology of the Nazi Party and who they wish to emulate. This is no more evident than them being behind the Unite the Right rally and not the Unite the Left in Charlottesville in 2017. This is not an advocacy for socialism. Like I said, history has proven that socialism infringes on individual liberties and should be rebuffed at every angle, especially here in America. This is to expose the egregious misrepresentation that the right projects in order to vilify and cause more hate and division in this nation. And it is complete disrespect for the men and women who fought and gave their lives in effort to stop fascism in World War II. It's just another rebranding attempt, similar to the lost cause of the Southern sympathizers after the Civil War. Both ends of the political spectrum, far left and far right, are antithetical to the intent of this nation. We should not be afraid to recognize the truths of history. And because of that, Democrats cannot escape the warnings of the USSR as the example of far left extremism. And the Republicans must realize that the Nazi Party is their warning of far right extremism. Vilifying each other by comparing them to past wickedness is destructive to our nation. We are stronger when we are united.